Hi, everybody. Okay. Welcome to my bedroom. Today, I'm going to be walking you through every single book I'm reading right now as a sex scholar, both personally and professionally. I love books. I have way too many. I have way too many books in general, but I have way too many books beside my bed. But one of the questions I'm honestly getting asked all the time is, what are you reading? What are you reading to improve your life personally? And then what are you reading professionally? Like, what is your research right now? So let's dive in. So we've got, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books beside my bed that I am reading right now. I am going to start with all the books I'm reading for work and research. So we're going to put personal development books on one side. Okay, so right now I'm currently reading 1, 2, 3, 4 personal development books. And I do something called intuitive reading, by the way. So if you're sitting here wondering, like, how the Bob does this bitch read 9 books at a time? I don't. I do something called intuitive reading. This is something that I started doing at UC Berkeley when I was a scholar and having to work and go to school full time and also maintain some semblance of a social life. So I'm going to explain to you what intuitive reading is and how I'm able to read so many books at the same time and still feel really satisfied and good with that. But yes, right now I'm reading 4 personal development books. Actually, it's more like 5 because one of those personal development books I'm listening to on Spotify audiobooks. And then for work and research, I'm reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books right now. And then for pleasure, I am reading 1 book right now, which maybe we should, because I actually have another book that I want to read for pleasure that's been on my list that I haven't. And seeing this imbalance of personal development books and workbooks, and then only 1 pleasure book, we got to up that ante. But let's begin. So right now, first I'm going to explain what intuitive reading is, because again, like, these are all the books that I'm currently reading for work. I'm going to go through each one by one. But the way that I do intuitive reading is I set time aside in my calendar to read. I read before I go to bed. In the morning when I first wake up, I sometimes will read, but usually the time that I read is before bed or in the bath. And fun fact about me, I unless like my hair is done really nice, I usually take a bath like every night before bed. But when my hair is done or I have events, then I don't, because that'll ruin the like hair style. Intuitive reading is essentially, I'll like come in, I'll look at all the books that I have, I'll intuit just which one is calling out to me. I'll pick that book up. And then if it's a research book, what I'll often do is I'll go through the table of contents and I'll intuit what are the chapters that I feel that I need to read most right now. What is most important for me? What am I drawn to? What am I called to? So that's how I go through so much research and scholarly books, and read all of these books and have the bandwidth to do that. And then with personal development books, for those, I also do intuitive reading where I'll like intuit, do I want to read this right now? But I won't go through the table of contents and dissect it chapter to chapter. I only really do that with research books, because sometimes I need to get a specific type of research that'll be in 1 chapter, and reading an entire book can take more time than I have. But what I love about intuitive reading is I'm often able to read lots of books at once, and I do always finish all of my books. I just don't give myself any deadlines to do that, because whether it's for work or for personal reasons, I do believe that reading should be a pleasure, and intuitive reading helps me do that. Okay. So that is intuitive reading. Thank you for listening. Now here's what I'm reading. So the first thing that I'm actually rereading, so this is a 2 for 1. Let me make sure you can see this. Sorry. Meow. So this is a 2 for 1. The History of Sexuality by Michel Foucault is one of, in my opinion, one of the greatest philosophy books in the last century, on how sexuality became to be what it is now based on the last few centuries of society, and how society disciplines, punishes, and manipulates us to view sex in a certain way. And that whole theory of being like of discipline and punishment is really big in this book, at least for me. I find that piece really fascinating. Now, this book, The History of Sexuality by Michel Foucault, is an incredibly dense and difficult book to get through. For me personally, I need to listen to it on an audiobook and then read it. Like I kind of switch between both. So that way I can feel like I'm getting lectured to and can learn that way and then go back and maybe skim or read the same chapter, which really helps me get to the root of understanding his philosophies. But also, what's even more helpful is having a guidebook that you can trust. So this guidebook was actually, I'm borrowing it from one of my mentors, one of my academic mentors that I met through the Carter Johnson Library. You'll remember I was a scholar in residence last year for them. And so what's just so helpful is, again, like some of these theory books, they're so profound, but they are so hard to get through. And I'm someone with ADHD, so I get distracted very easily, especially when a book is a little bit more dense, even if it's fascinating and incredible. So I love kind of coupling these two together. It's just a way that I can support myself in my learning. And there's no right or wrong way to learn, too. Like we get so many silly messages about like, if you don't read a book from back to front, if you're not able to like read this by itself and you need a guidebook, like if you use Spark Notes, you're like cheating. Honestly, like use whatever tools you need to learn and make learning an enjoyable experience. And in fact, when we're trying to pigeonhole ourselves and tell ourselves there's a specific way to learn and engage information and digest information, then we make learning stop feeling fun. If you take learning and think to yourself, okay, like for me personally, I'm dyslexic, I have ADD or ADHD, who knows at this point. Um, so it can be hard to sit and read, not just because of my fast brain and the ADD, but also because I'm dyslexic. So that doesn't really help matters. So for me, having like listening to audiobooks, reading the physical book, and then having guidebooks that break down really complicated um, language and prose, because the philosophies in this book are not complicated. Like once you understand what he's trying to say, it's so eye-opening and empowering. But the way he writes is really dense and it's hard for me. So, and I'm not the only one. So that's why I took a long second to just like remember, support yourself in your own learning. Okay. Don't let people tell you how to learn or that you're stupid if you need help retaining information, please. That is ridiculous. The next book that I am reading is a behemoth of a novel. Look at how thick this girl is, nice and thick and beautiful. This book is called The Great Cosmic Mother. If you're following me on Instagram, I've done these before where I share with you the books I'm currently reading behind my bed. So you'll see that I have been reading and rereading this book many times. It's not the first time I've talked about it because, again, like with a book this big and you're reading theory, you have deadline, or at least I have deadlines for my research, right? Like I do intuitive reading. I figure out when I need to read this book. And then I also will go to the table of contents. Like, look at how many essays are in this book. Let me see. Like we've got so many essays to pick from. And so again, you just go through and intuit, you know? And what I love about this book, actually, to just show you the table of contents a little bit, this book is so cool. This book basically teaches you about the creation of patriarchy. How did we, over the last 12,000 years, completely transition from a matriarchal culture that was more egalitarian and more about partnerships into the patriarchal model that we have today, which is all about creating dominator cultures based on hierarchies. And, you know, whether you care about these buzzwords, patriarchy or not, what I love about books like this is it just shows you like, listen, this is the history. This is what we're dealing with. Patriarchy isn't actually natural or normal. It was created, and it was created over 12,000 years of, you know, societal shifts. And how did that happen? This book is incredible for this. And this book isn't a book like necessarily about sex. But what I love when we're thinking about the creation of patriarchy and when we're thinking about the history of humanity, because you can trace back human history over 50,000 years. Um, Oftentimes, when people say history, oh, I'm a historian, I talk about history. Often, people who hear that assume we're talking about the last 2,000 years. Maybe we're talking about the history of Jesus Christ and Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Or maybe we're talking about the Victorian era just a couple centuries ago. Oftentimes, when people talk about history, we're really only referencing the last 2,000 years. And then when we do that, we make the mistake of thinking, well, patriarchy and our current way of doing civilizations is natural because that's all there's ever been. But that's not true at all. When we look past the last 2,000 years and actually look at all of human history that we have access to, both historically and archaeologically, we see that we can trace human history and intelligent civilizations back over 50,000 years. And for most of that time, human societies worshiped sex, worshiped birth, and were matriarchal. And then in the last 12,000 years, that system shifted into a patriarchal model. And once men did start establishing control, they needed to figure out a way to make sure that their inheritances and the things that they were accumulating could remain intact and be passed down to their families. And that's how we switched from matriarchal cultures where women did not have one partner and could have sex with whomever they wanted, and that was normal, and give birth to many children without having to identify who the father was, to a patriarchal model where now men are in leadership positions and they now need to make sure that the woman that they are with is only with them. As long as they can control birth, they can now make sure that their inheritance and everything that they're building is safe. And so this is essentially, like, with this shift in power came huge shifts in how we did society. So this book really is incredibly well researched, and it goes over that entire shift and everything that happened. And what is so cool about this book is, even though it's not a book written about sex, very early on the authors discovered that you cannot have this discussion about human history and how we have evolved if we are not talking about sex, because sex is literally the root of all of it. So that is that book. The next book that I'm reading, I love this book. This book is so fast. You can tell that I've been going a little ham. This book is called Female Husbands. So there's so many incredible books about trans history, trans people. And what I really liked about this one is something that's such an interesting trend that I notice is trans women sometimes, like, are, like, it kind of can have more research about them. Like, when I research the transgender history, when I research trans life, trans issues, politics, all of these things, I very rarely find a book that's kind of exclusively on more sapphic transgender relationships, and specifically about transgender men or masculine folks. And so what I really loved about this book is it's actually one of the few that I found that is just and also, if I'm wrong about that, please someone in the comments let me know. Give me book recommendations. I love it. I'm here for it. Part of being a sex scholar is acknowledging, like, you never stop learning and you can be wrong about something. And the way you learn that is through more education, and I'm here for it. But from what I've found more often, and especially doing a lot of research, I find a lot of incredible books on trans history and trans people, that will talk about, like, try to include everyone in the community, which is a lot of people, different people in that community: trans women, trans men, the spectrum of being gender nonconforming, of being non-binary, all of these different things. And then I also often find books written about trans women. And maybe that's just what I'm finding, what I'm looking for. I'm not sure what I'm attracting. But anyway, this book was really fun to read because I was like, oh, this book feels um, far more about, like, queer relationships that either are trans men, or maybe these are non-binary people, even though they didn't have that kind of language at the time, but it's like those butch femme dynamics. So it's nice to see this and learn about the history of this. And I believe this book specifically, when we're thinking of ooh, okay, actually, I'm inspired to read this quote from the book. Um, And I totally forgot what my other thought was going to be. So we'll just have to table that. But okay. Long before people identified as transgender or lesbian, there were female husbands and the women who loved them. Female husbands, people assigned female who transgendered, lived as men, and married women. They were true queer pioneers. Moving deftly from the colonial era to just before World War I, this author uncovers the riveting and very personal stories of ordinary people who lived as men despite tremendous risk, danger, and threat of violence. Um, I love this so much. So, anyway, this is a really, really cool book, super riveting, by Jen Mannion, Female Husbands, A Trans History. And next, ooh, this one is like partly for pleasure and partly um, uh, for research. So, fun fact, someone in the comments on YouTube on one of our videos commented and was like, Nadej, have you ever read Sex at Dawn? And I was like, no, I haven't actually, but I'm going to go get that book right now. And so, thank you to the person who commented. I read all the comments. So, please comment, say hi, let me know what you're reading. Let me know maybe if you want a book review or what you want to see on this channel, because everything we do at Pleasure Science, I created this for you guys, you know. I want to share my knowledge with the world and all the quirky things I learn about. But what I love about Sex at Dawn, this book is actually like, if we were to take like the history of sexuality and the great cosmic mother and have them make uh, a book baby that was very easy to read and read like poetry and was really fascinating, that would be Sex at Dawn. So Sex at Dawn is an incredibly researched book, all about the history of sexuality. And that clearly kind of explains what I was talking about before, how sex is at the root of the huge shift in culture from matriarchy to patriarchy and what that means for all genders. You know, it's so interesting when we think about like being critical about patriarchy. I feel like a lot of men hear that buzzword and they shut down, and I can understand why that is, because I know as a culture we are pretty scathingly angry with some of the ways society is right now, and justifiably so. Um, but you know, being critical about patriarchy isn't saying that you hate men. And in fact, it's really important to be critical about patriarchy because, like this book shows, patriarchy hurts men just as much as it hurts all other genders. It just looks differently. You know, like with women, with queer people, it can look like a lot of violence, sexual violence, shaming, silencing. With men, it looks like a lot of that machismo culture. It looks like a lot of cutting off of emotion, of vulnerability, which then, of course, is going to affect all of your relationships and it's going to affect your erectile functions, actually. Like blocked emotions create stress, raise your cortisol level. It's going to affect how you perform in the bedroom. And this is why we should all care and be critical of patriarchy, because the gender roles that we have normalized in society and the sexual expectations we have normalized in society and the relationship expectations we have normalized in society. All of these things were not designed by you. They were designed by a culture. Uh, we could get, that's a whole other, anyway, but the whole point is it's really important to be critical of patriarchy and to notice how it's flowing through the world. And this book is one that really, really helps us do that. And it's really worth reading. So, yeah. And then, of course, it's a book also about relationships, how we mate, why we stray, what it means in modern relationships. But I love that the beginning of this book is all about sex history, which is so important. I think you can't truly be open to some of the changes you might need to make to get the relationship of your dreams or maintain and create the relationship of your dreams with your current partner if you don't understand how current societal norms are literally designed to keep you isolated, in shame, and fearful of sex. None of those things are healthy and good for us. So those are the books that I am reading for work. Now we're going to talk about the books I am reading for my own personal development. So I am a total personal development junkie. I love learning about how to improve the thoughts I think. I love learning about all different types of modality and on how to make our lives better, not just because I'm always trying to be the best version of myself, but also because I have a private practice and I work as a coach with clients. And so I'm always researching personal development because I find that there are so many ways we can support ourselves and live a better life. And we need these tools, and that's part of what I do for work is I give people these type of tools. And it comes from this genuine place of wanting to improve myself and live my best life. So the first book that I'm reading, I'm actually almost finished with this one. It's called Living from Inner Clarity: How to Clear Your Energy, Access Your Higher Truth to Live Your Freedom. And it's written by a woman named Dr. Sophia Trevena. So this book is fascinating. I actually went to an event in LA in November, and I saw this woman speak live, Dr. Trevena. And I was really blown away by just her story. So she was an engineer, top of her field, and this was in her 20s. She's in her 50s now. She was an engineer, worked at IBM, top of her field. And this sounds so woo woo, but she started getting messages and speaking to angels, or kind of intuiting these divine messages. And for her, the language she uses of how she understands this gift is she's able to talk to ancestors or the spirit guides of the people around her. And so she essentially realized she had this gift. She took a few years, a few tumultuous years, to quit her job, figure out what on earth she was going to do with her life. This was over 20 years ago. And since then, she has become, I mean, I don't even know if she would call herself an executive coach, but she has worked with CEOs all over the world. She uses her gifts to help people figure out how to live a more sustainable life. Because she worked in sustainability, and she actually teaches like major companies and CEOs how to put people before profit, employees before profit, collaboration before competition. And she essentially teaches people how to shift all of these things and gives them all these messages from these angelic guides, and has created incredible change and has been doing that for 20 years. So anyway, so her story really blew me away. And I'm someone who, I love spirituality. I love the woo. Like, I'm a scientist. I'm here for the data. But a quote I love is, spirituality shows us what science has yet to prove, you know? And I do think we need a little bit of both. We need the science, we need the data. I want to see all of these things. This is a huge way we understand ourselves. I'm so grateful to live in the information era. And we can't forget that, life is a mystery. There are so many things that we don't know, and there are so many people with gifts that are intangible, but that doesn't make them not real. So, in this book, this woman basically writes the step by step way to really use your intuition to live from inner clarity. So, she doesn't teach you how to talk to the angels necessarily. I mean, in a sense, she does, because she's teaching you how to connect to your intuition. So that way, no matter where you're going in life, you always feel clear. But one of the most beautiful things that I got from this book, that I appreciated as a sex scholar, is 99% of the time I meet people and they're so nice, they're so kind, they're so warm and open, and they're excited about what I do. And then 1% of the time I meet people and they're triggered by what I do, and it leads to disrespectful at best interactions, and sometimes scary interactions, that make me feel unsafe. And so, one of the things in this book that she goes over is how to essentially update, like, not update, but like connect to the highest version of yourself. Like, when you imagine the version of yourself that is confident and magnetic, and they know what they're doing with their whatever it is for you, like they have a strong career, they're in love, whatever the highest version of yourself is, she really teaches you how to do that. And one of the affirmations that she outlines in this book, which for me has been so beautiful and helpful, especially in those moments where someone isn't maybe open to the work that I do, or I get hate online, or even scarier messages online. Um, this ritual is super, super helpful. And so basically, she has this, here we go. She basically has this modality where she explains to you just like how powerful different emotions are. For example, love is one of the most powerful emotions. And she has this kind of mantra that she shares that I actually have been using and I love. And it's I radiate love, neutralizing all that is not love. And I actually like use this now. Like this last week, I was the keynote speaker at one event, and then I hosted another private event for a brand partner of mine. And so last week was a big event week out in community at the conference that I was the keynote speaker at. I mean, there were over 700 people at that conference, and then at the other event, that one was smaller, maybe like 30 or 40 people, something, maybe even 50 actually, now that I think about it. But the point is, when I'm in those situations, that is when I really do want to be protecting my energy because I love to serve. I love to connect with people. I love to meet people, but every now and then, there's someone who maybe makes me feel a little unsafe. And so this whole last week, I was using the thought work outlined in this book to essentially just it, just with like using your words and the energy, the life force energy that lives within you to create kind of like a boundary of love and protection around me. And it is so powerful. I completely noticed a difference in how I was not only walking into rooms, I felt like empowered and peaceful and calm. Like I almost want to say like just that 1% more centered than maybe I usually would before using those mantras. And every single person I met, not a single, I didn't have one bad experience. I had the most incredible week last week. Everybody I met, by the way, is so wonderful to have met all of you. So yeah, so I love these kind of things. They're very powerful. So that's one book I'm reading. The other personal development book I'm reading is by one of my favorite authors, and it's The Pivot Year by Brianna Wiest. And this one is really simple. It's just little things for every single day to like help you have the best day ever. And so what I want to do right now is I'm just going to open to a random day and then we're going to read. Okay. This is the entry for day number 273, the pivot year. Right now, you are learning how to live. You are learning what feels right and what doesn't, what you like and don't, and who you want to be. You are learning how to become yourself, how to make it through your days without letting your spirit wear you down. Right now, you are learning how to be, how to exist in the quiet, in the questions, in the faith of everything that has not yet come. But surely one day it will arrive. Right now, you are learning how to love. Love yourself today, your past self, and the person you'll one day be. Oh, I love that. So that's The Pivot Year, Brianna Wiest. And then we have shout out to Dr. Sophia Trevena again. So I'm almost done with her book, the Inner Clarity book. And so I went ahead and purchased The Power of the Divine Feminine in Business. So like I mentioned, this is her, if you want to see her gorgeous face, we love it. So and I love this. Yeah, she's an award-winning professor, author, speaker, CEO, an angelic channel. I mean, what a bad bitch. How freaking cool. Anyway, this book by Dr. Sophia goes through her 7-step framework that allows you as a business owner to essentially like scale and have a successful and profitable business while making sure that you're putting people first and planet first. That's her 2 big things, people and planet first. How to transition out of competition into collaboration, and then put people and planet first to have more profits than you could dream of. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to read this book because something that is so, that's something that's missing in a lot of companies. Like she calls it like the feminine, and I do agree with that. Like that feminine energy is missing in capitalism for sure. I actually don't think feminine energy can actually exist in capitalism. But I just love her framework that she kind of is taking us back to remembering women and being with women, or not women, sorry, the feminine, because that's different. Like the feminine energy has no gender. Um, yeah. Anyway, I haven't started it yet, but it is by my bedside table, and I can't wait to learn this framework because I love my company way too much to not have it be all about people and the planet. And that's why I kind of started everything that I did and that I'm doing. So, our second to last book here, we're coming to a close, is The Artist's Way. I just started this book. Like, I'm really right at the beginning of it, but I'm so excited because I'm an author, I'm a writer, I'm in the process of pitching one book that is finished, one manuscript that's finished. That's actually a fiction book, fun fact. And then I'm in the process of writing my second nonfiction book. So I really was realizing that like the creative spark was kind of missing. And one of my dear friends, Tiffany, shout out to you, has been reading this book and telling me over and over and over how incredible it's been for her. So I have started reading The Artist's Way, and this is a book I'm going to read from front to back. Very excited about it. And then our last book, so this is the pleasure book. This is my for pleasure read, and it's actually something I'm rereading, and it is Harry Potter, and this book has been destroyed. This book has been destroyed. I got this book when I was maybe 13 or 12. When did it come out? I got it when it came out. When it came out, let me see. This book came out in 1999. I was 9 years old. I was 9 years old when this book came out, and I bought it, and it is destroyed. I'm surprised it still has the like cover on it. Because like another fun fact about me is I don't aim to destroy my books, but I tend to uh, write in them, put sticky notes in them, highlight in them, accidentally leave them out so the sprinklers may get them. Yeah. So anyway, this book has been through it all. And I love that for this book, but I'm currently reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets as my pleasure read before bed. And I'm about halfway through it. What part are oh, the polyjuice potion. Yeah, Harry and Hermione and Ron just made the polyjuice potion, and Hermione's about to turn into the cat. That's where we're at. Not her finest moment, but you know what? She's still a bad bitch. So those are all of the books beside my bed right now that I am reading. Thank you for joining me on this no, we're on YouTube live today. Momo's in the house. Momo, did you boop? You want to say hi? You want to say hi to the people? Or do you just want pets? You just want scratchies. Momo making a guest appearance for the scratches. Respect, girl. Totally respect that. All righty. I hope everybody has a beautiful day. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to learn. And if you're not a reader or you're not good at reading, that does not mean that you are not smart and worthy of learning all the things. In this modern day and age, the most important thing I think is fact checking what you read or learn. But outside of that, use whatever you need to learn, right? Like I was saying before, like there's nothing wrong with buying a guidebook so you can learn how to read, or not learn how to read, but you could learn about something much simpler. There's nothing wrong with choosing to just listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks. There's nothing wrong with being a visual learner and learning things through watching, documentaries or TV or what have you. There's no right or wrong way to learn. And so figure out how to support yourself. And how to support your learning. And don't let anybody tell you that there's a right or wrong way to learn or you have to do something like X, Y, and Z. That is the best way to make sure that learning goes from fun to just the worst experience you could have. Thank you so much for coming and listening. Let me know in the comments if you have any book recommendations, because like I said, someone left a comment in a video from a few weeks ago, and now I am reading this book. So I love to hear from you all. I hope you all have a beautiful day. And I will see you next Wednesday. I'm actually going to be doing a really fun interview with one of the biggest dominatrix coaches and BDSM coaches, I think, in the world. Anyway, So that should be fun. Tune in next Wednesday. New videos every Wednesday. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and let me know what you want to learn about next. Bye.